Hi, welcome to the School Run. I'm Jane.
And I'm Liv.
And we are going to share with you the best conversations we have on our school run.
We will invite guests and debate topics that affect and resonate with every generation.
We all remember our own school run, so maybe have a think about yours.
What do you remember?
Hello and welcome to another episode of the School Run. Today we are joined by Jenni Dunman, my award-winning friend in franchising. Jenni is a founder and CEO of Daisy First Aid, which provides first aid training across the UK. And Jenni's going to tell us more about that, I'm sure. She's an ex-police detective sergeant, proud wife, mum of 3, speaker, and global success and mindset trainer. So I'm sure that today's episode is going to be insightful and fun. Thank you for joining us, Jenni.
Oh, I'm so excited, Jane. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, Liv.
Hi.
We're really excited. So where do we start? Like, we became friends several years ago, didn't we, in the business world. Tell us about you. What was school like and what's led you to where you are today?
Gosh, I think I was thinking about this before we came on, and I was thinking, where does this start? Because I feel like I've been 3 different people, from like childhood to teen, sort of young adult, to now where I am now. It's been such a journey. I think as a child and being at school, I can be described best as like an in-betweener, which is definitely not a bad thing. I was like, I coasted through school. Like, I wasn't exceptionally bright, but I wasn't a naughty kid. I just coasted like midway through the centre. I'd be very surprised if any teacher even remembers me. like wallpaper.
How do you feel about that, Liv? Is that how you see it at school? Like, are the people that are in the minds of the teachers, and I don't know.
Yeah, to be honest, that's how I kind of feel. I mean, I'm not up there with like the super intelligent people, but then I also am not really, like naughty, as you said. But yeah, I think that's just like a nice place to be, just sat in the middle, like, yeah.
I feel like it's a great place to be, because I feel like there's a lot of pressure on you when you're a kid from so many different ways. You're still learning, aren't you? You're still growing into the person that you're going to be. So just to sort of, as long as you're happy, just going through the middle. I say that to my children, don't worry, just if you're happy, then I'm happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us about your children. So how old are they, and what are they pursuing in life? How do they view being at school and college or whatever age they're up to?
Yes, I've got Benny, who's 9, and then I've got Lottie, who's coming up 13, and then I've got Daisy, who's coming up 15. But yeah, I mean, they like school. They have friends in school. I wouldn't say they loved school. I think they're very much like I was. They're just in-betweeners, but enjoying the time that they're there, really.
Yeah, brilliant. And so in terms of, when you were at school, did you know what you wanted to be when you grew up, in inverted commas?
Do you know what? When I was younger, I had quite an unhappy, very, very early childhood. So I put a label on myself as being naturally unlucky. And I carried that through for a really, really long time. So all through school, I would always say, I'm just the unlucky one. No good things ever happen to me. I'm unlucky. My life's like a roller coaster. I remember all these negative words I used to tell myself. I'm not sure whether I necessarily voiced them to other people, but I certainly told myself a lot of negative things. I definitely thought that good things happen to other people. And the weird thing is, when I look back now, I realise that actually, having been in the police force and seen some horrific things, I actually was a very lucky child, and lots of great things did happen to me. But I never saw it. I never let myself believe it, and I never even recognised it, which I find so unbelievable now. I guess that's why, as a mum now, I'm always the one that wants to highlight when something good happens, for my children, because I really didn't do that for myself.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it, the language that we use, and we don't know about that back then, but it can have a real impact, can't it?
Oh my goodness, such an impact. Because if I could have gone back to my, myself back then, I would say, it's all right to sometimes feel anxious. It's okay to sometimes feel afraid or intimidated or, all of these emotions, which now, as a grown-up, as an adult, I know are completely normal. But when I was that kid, that child, I thought that everyone else had their stuff together and everyone else knew what they were doing. And I was the only one that just had no idea.
Yeah, and I think that's like multiplied with obviously now me being a teenager now with like social media and not just comparing yourselves to people at school, but you basically can compare yourself to everyone else in the world.
Yeah.
You can literally compare your life to anyone if you search them up, and that can have, it can have a positive impact on a lot of people. And I think social media can be used for really, really good things, but it also can be really detrimental to people if you're constantly comparing to someone when actually their life, what they're putting out, isn't actually realistic.
I completely agree, Liv. I actually am glad that I wasn't around as a child when social media was there because, I think you have an immense amount of pressure to conform to these photoshopped people or the highlights that they put on their life. And, it takes a strong person to look back and be like, that's probably not their life. But, we were fans of people back in the days and posters on the walls and stuff. But we didn't have that level of social media awareness of what celebrities were like, or indeed anybody else.
Yeah.
No, in fact, what we had, Jenny, we had the magazines, didn't we? Like Smash Hits or...
Yeah.
I can't even remember the magazines that were around or what you were reading or looking at. But you're right, posters on the wall, maybe watching Top of the Pops at the weekend.
Yeah.
And that was it, wasn't it? There was nothing else influencing us.
It was like Just 17 I used to read More magazine, which was a little bit risque for like the teenagers. Do you remember?
Yeah.
And you look at somebody, but you know that it was just somebody that had a photo shoot. There wasn't that level of believability that there is in social media now. It's like almost insane. And actually, I think it's moved on a bit now because back before then, people didn't really realise that you could put filters on and airbrush people. But now everybody can do it. I think people now realise that, people don't actually look like that in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, did you go all the way through school up to 18? Did you go to college, university? What was your route?
Yeah, I left school at 16. I was well ready. I did GCSEs, I did okay. I got 8 GCSEs, 8 passes. I was really happy with that. Did not have a clue what I wanted to do. And I think I went to like a careers advisor like you do. And they were like, well, you could be a nurse or you could be a secretary or you could be a police officer. There was like these standard occupations that you could take. And I was just like, I don't know, I'm 16. So I ended up doing working in retail for a while, which I actually loved. And I think gave me a really, really good grounding in customer service, how to deal with people, both happy people and not so happy people. So I really enjoyed that side of things. I loved that kind of customer-facing role, and I think I was really good at it. Then I went and did a little bit of work in Canary Wharf, did some office work, which I have to say, absolutely not for me. That repetitive same thing every day. There's no change. There's the same people, the same office, the same lunch. Oh, my God. And I just remember sitting here thinking, I just can't do this for the rest of my life.
No, that's really interesting.
That was me because in last summer I was working in this tiny little cafe as a waitress, and I just remember when I left because I was focusing on my exams. I just remember it was just so repetitive. And it was like the same. I mean, honestly, I loved working like the customers, like the regular customers that come in, and you'd get to know what they ordered as the drinks. And that was all lovely. And I liked having the conversations with those people, but it was all the same.
Yeah.
And then I looked at Mum's job and I thought, as a CEO, you do different, like one day you'll be answering a complaint, one day you'll be doing like finance, one day you'll be doing marketing. And I thought, that's just so many things you have to juggle, and that was more exciting to me than something repetitive.
Yeah, and some people love it, don't they? Some people love the office environment. They know what they're doing. They're confident in their role, and they don't need that. They don't need to feel that they need to expand or do different things, and it just suits them perfectly. And I respect that completely.
Yeah,
not for me though.
like the structure of their job, and they know that.
The routines and the boundaries, and that, like you say, that's okay. And I think it's working out as a young person who you are and discovering and finding out, what your place in the world, but really knowing yourself. And I guess that's missing from school. Who was the person that helped you to understand you, Jenni? Or was that all your own work? Or was there someone who really opened your eyes?
Yeah, I thought about this question actually. And if I'm completely honest, I didn't have any mentors or role models at all that pop into my head at all during school. Like I said, I think I just quietly slipped under the radar. I honestly think that my later work has all come from my inner workings. I've worked very much on myself, my own mental health, doing what I can to become a better person. And obviously I'm still working on that. Like, none of us know everything. It's a constant, work in progress. But I think when I realized that the only person that can change you is you, the only person that can make those better decisions is you. And, you can't blame other people or your past or things that have happened on the way that you behave now. The only person that can do that is you. So have I got a mentor? I've got loads now. There's loads of people that I respect, loads of people in our industry, loads of people that obviously have like a bigger profile, but mostly people that I've met along the way and I can take bits from and be like, I massively respect that. I've learned this from you. I've learned that from you. Multiple people.
Yeah, and I think that it's really interesting, is that because we become open to it in the roles that we have, we're opened up to that. Should we be giving teenagers and children in schools an approach where they do open themselves up and have some of that self-development learning?
You've got to. Then when you were talking about how you've learned things from different people along the way, that's at school. I've talked about this before in one of the first episodes, but how it's not built for teamwork. You have to do everything individually, do your homework by yourself, don't copy people. But after a lesson, I'd go to my friends who were in top set maths and I'd say, oh, what were you doing in your lesson? She'd teach me and I'd learn even more than I did kind of in my lesson. But I was learning from other people and they were all helping me, and that's how I think you learn the most knowledge from other people around you. Like you said, you don't know everything, and you need those people around you that are going to push you and challenge you every day.
Absolutely. And it's the people around that you want to listen to, isn't it? Not the people that you're forced to listen to because that's what you have to do. It's the people that you genuinely find an interest in, like your friends or, your people around you, your colleagues. That's a really interesting point, actually. Yeah, I like that.
It is interesting. So you had the office job at Canary Wharf. For people, we're in the northwest of England, Jenni, so I obviously know where Canary Wharf is and what that is, but it's a place within London that's all office blocks, isn't it? It's the financial and administration, and it's, very office driven, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is all offices, high-rise offices. I have to say, being very young, 19, 20, great nightlife, loads of friends, going out, having a really lovely time outside of work. But yes, it is just full of office workers.
So university for you and that route and being channeled down that route wasn't the route you took, was it not? I mean, this is things that I don't know about you, but what happened after Canary Wharf?
Yeah. University for me was never an option. It was never something that was discussed at home. It was something that none of my family or extended family had ever done. We come from quite a working class family who are all grafters. They all work extremely hard, but not from a university background. So it wasn't something that was ever an option, and I never gave it any consideration. I think perhaps if I'd have known what I wanted to do for a living, and obviously I would need a degree to get it, then perhaps I would have looked further into it. But no, most of my school friends did go, but it wasn't something that I considered.
No. And I don't think it's for everybody. And I actually, there's a lot of schools that do sort of focus on that, and that's the goal. And actually there's so much more to life. It's not for everyone, and it's not the only route to being happy and successful.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, where I've been looking around all these colleges, and one of the main slides you put on the board is like the Cambridge and Oxford, how many applicants get into those top universities, and it's one of the main things that kind of colleges or sixth forms like pride themselves on, how many people they get into Cambridge and Oxford. And I think, yeah, but I mean, some people that haven't been to university probably do so much better than, some of them do a lot better than those who have been to university, because it's more about, I mean, obviously, I've never been to university, but it's...
And I wouldn't go back.
And it's all kind of, in a classroom, I guess you don't really get experience of the outside world. Whereas if you look at someone that maybe didn't go into to university and had maybe a job straight away, they've got having more experience of the world around them. They're not like enclosed in a campus or a classroom for another how many years.
It's interesting, isn't it, Jenny? Because I suppose you're right. If you know you want to be a doctor and you've got to do that route, then of course you've got no option, have you?
Exactly. And you know what? Life experience is, oh my God, so valuable. If you do end up in the workplace younger and you decide not to go down the that route, some of the most happiest, the most successful people I know left school early, or left school up before or after their A-levels and didn't go to uni. Obviously, I've got friends that did and did amazingly well as well, but I just feel like there is a lot of pressure to keep going with this education system. But actually, life experience is so invaluable. I've actually got a friend, she's super, super intelligent. She's amazing. And she went to uni, and she said that she has gotten, this is her words, not mine, she doesn't have any common sense. She said, I'm not streetwise. I don't have any common sense. She said, I can sit with my extremely clever friends and we'll have debates and conversations. She says, but put me out on the street, I feel like a fish out of water. I just don't know. I just don't know. I just don't fit in.
That's really interesting, isn't it? It is very, very interesting. And you're just so right. It's horses for courses and finding yourself and developing and finding your place in the world. And you're right, life experience is everything, isn't it? So where did you go? How did you end up in the police, and what was that journey like?
Yeah, I mean, life experience, I think, is what got me into the police, and I think is what made me so good at my job. And that's because I had been, I was going to say on the streets then, I don't mean like on the streets, working. I mean, I was used to hanging on the streets. I was used to hanging around with people. I was probably didn't put myself into the best crowds. In fact, I'm playing it down. I put myself into some terrible crowds when I was a teenager. As I say, I wasn't very happy. I didn't really have any self-love. So I hang out with people like me. And this is where that like attracts like, that power of positivity, law of attraction all comes in. I was attracting negative people into my life because that's exactly who I was. And I can't even remember where I was going with that now. Oh, yes, how I got into the police.
Ended up in the police, yeah.
So going into the police at that time meant that you got accommodation, you got food, you got paid, and you had a job. So it ticked all of my boxes. And
How old were you at this point, Jenny?
So I applied when I was 19 and I started when I was 21.
Okay.
Yes. So it ticked all the boxes. Plus, I needed to remove myself from the negative people. I definitely knew that. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I went to work in central London.
Wow.
I found myself surrounded by people that had each other's backs, that supported each other. I loved, and this is going to sound weird, I loved helping victims of crime. You know, people that had been through adversity or a traumatic event. I really found my place. I really found I was good at it, and I had that empathic side that I didn't even realise I had. So I moved on.
I suppose from that empathy piece, you understood people. I guess you brought your own personal experiences, to that, and you were able to make an impact. And that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny because you never really know the impact that you have on people because you don't really hear what happened, the end result, really. You don't really get to know them as a person. You'd like to just think that, even if momentarily you got them to a place of safety or you put somebody away, that had committed a crime against them, I take pride that I had a part in that. From a sort of dealing with the suspects points of view and dealing with the violence and things that we came across, I didn't really have any fear. So I suppose that life experience again led me to not having fear of dealing with violent confrontational people, whereas lots of other people really would struggle with that. Whereas at the time, I'm completely different now. I've got 3 children. I'm a complete wimp. But at the time, I was tough. I was tough, but I really just remember that. There's certain stories that will always stick in my head, and I just think, I was part of that, and I wonder what she's doing now, and I wonder what happened, and I loved it.
I mean, I don't know. For me, I've always found like being in the police like a really scary job because of all the things that you see, and I just wonder how, when you were doing your job and you saw all the like violence and everything, how when you came home you separated your work from home, because I think it would like stick with me and I'd be thinking about it all night.
Do you know what? That's such a really good question, and it's quite relevant actually, because there was no aftercare when you deal with traumatic events. I believe there is now, but there wasn't at the time any kind of mental health training, or there was no kind of follow-up. How are you feeling after you dealt with whatever it was? When I was in the police, you dealt with things by going down to the pub with your colleagues and drinking through it. And then you would then go home drunk and then be back at work the next day. And that is the lifestyle that we led. And I don't advocate it at all, because all you do is you just suppress.
And compound everything. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I believe there's, so much support now, but back then there really, really wasn't. So how did I deal with it? I don't know. I think I probably did compound it. I don't think that I have much PTSD, but probably if a doctor analysed me, I probably do.
Yeah. And I'm really interested to know, and maybe some young people that are listening to this, because I know Olivia's got followers of her age. We've had such amazing support since we started this podcast. Someone who wants to go into the police, and I know you're talking many years ago now of your experience, but what was the application process like? What sort of training was expected of you? Can you remember that? Can you share any of that?
Yeah, so I remember you definitely had to have maths and English GCSE passes. You had to do a fitness test, which is, it was quite a lot harder back then. I think it's different now. You had to be put in scenarios, so you had to go into a scenario, how would you deal with this? But having had no police knowledge, it was fairly simple. What else did we have to do? I think we had to do some sort of written and maths tests back then. But
was there any sort of psychometric profiling? Was there any in your memory of that? I guess they were doing it in the process, perhaps, rather than something quite formulaic.
Yeah, I think technology's massively changed now, but a lot of it was all done face-to-face interviews. So you would be on an interview panel, and they would ask you questions, and you would have to answer, in the right way. I think I can remember one of them was like, so you're out and your friends smoking cannabis, what would you do? That kind of questioning was at the time. Or what if your friend said something and it was racist? What would you do? And it was those kind of questions. So it wouldn't necessarily be like a police related answer they're just looking for the right type of person to join.
Yeah, interesting. And I'm not being funny, but central London policing must be totally different to anywhere else in the country.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it has everything from gangland violence to domestics to the murders, the West End nightlife and the violence there and the shoplifting. I guess you have a little bit of everything there. So I feel really fortunate that I got to experience a whole range of stuff. But I did end up going into a department called Sapphire, which is the sexual offences unit, where we would deal with women that had been victims of sexual offences, and then we'd also deal with arresting the offenders as well. So, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
I love bringing people to justice.
You must be really good. Well, I know you are. I know this before I even asked this question, but really good at dynamically risk assessing a situation and going in and reading it and dealing with it. I'm thinking now from your first aid that you've gone on to develop, but ultimately being a police officer and getting that call and ending up in a situation, having to deal with it.
Yeah, massively. And I think if you were to consider a job like the police or actually any emergency services jobs, that is something you would need to consider whether or not you can stay calm in a crisis or calm in an environment when you don't know exactly what's happening. If you're the sort of person that thrives on that and loves it and finds it really interesting, then that is probably a job that you could look at. If you're the person that goes, oh my God, I would absolutely hate that, I'm terrified, I'd run away, then it might be a different job for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how do you feel about it? Because the idea of coming on the podcast was to look at the range of careers that people do, the pivoting that they do from career to career.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm quite good in stressful situations that I wouldn't run, probably mostly because I love to help people, and I really like to, make sure they're okay, and I like to fix things. So I probably would keep going and keep going and keep going until, I've helped them. I'm just trying to say, I feel like I'm watching an episode of Happy Valley. Because it's like talking to a police officer. It's like...
Well, Jenny, she was a police officer, not now. We're going to go on to her further story, but are you quite overwhelmed?
Yeah, it's amazing to listen to.
Oh, it is amazing to listen to, and it's things that I don't know about you, Jenny. So how long were you in the police force? Where did you get to with that? And then where was the change?
So I did 14 years in the Met and the Metropolitan Police. And I feel massively privileged. I feel massively privileged that I got to do that. I went down the promotion route. Well, I went down the detective route firstly. I was definitely found that I was much better investigating crime than being the uniformed officer that went to answer calls. So I really found that was my niche. And that's the lovely thing about the police is there's so many different departments and areas that you can go into. So you can find the one that you just love the most. So I did the detective exam and became a detective constable. And then I decided that I was going to get promoted to detective sergeant and manage my own team.
So I think as a detective sergeant, you're in your own clothes. I'm thinking Happy Valley, and I'm thinking, of the different police dramas that we have on the TV. So you were plain clothed and you did this sort of undercover detective work.
Not quite undercover, but yes, detective, absolutely, and in plain clothes. So yeah, we'd rock up in our suits, and we'd attend crime scenes, and we'd sort of investigate it after the events happened. So not quite as exciting as Happy Valley, but sometimes it was. But then you've got all the extra bits of paperwork they don't show you.
Yeah, and all the stats and data and all of that stuff. Yeah, amazing. And so your time in the police, 14 years there, and then what happened?
So I had 2 children when I was in the police, and then I was pregnant with my third, and that's when I decided that I was going to go on a career break, mainly because I was juggling shift patterns and children, and it wasn't quite working out for me. The thing with being a detective is if you've got prisoners in custody, you can't go home. You have to stay until it's dealt with. And obviously, if you've got young children and childcare, and it all just became a muddle. So I decided that I was going to take a 5-year career break and concentrate on my family. And so that's what I did. So I took the career break when I was pregnant with Benny. And then something happened which changed everything.
Oh, exciting. Okay. So, that must have been a hard decision as well, because if you love your job and, you've got a great team but obviously you love your family more, but it's a balancing act to make that tough decision, isn't it?
It is. And I think I didn't expect the feeling of my priorities changing quite as much as they did when I had my children. In my head, I thought, just have children and carry on working. And then when they were born, I just felt everything shift so differently. I became very aware of my own personal safety at work. I became very aware and actually a little bit, I was going to say neurotic, that's probably the wrong word, but really quite overprotective of them. Whereas I probably knew too much. I probably saw too much.
Yes.
So it was definitely the right decision for me just to step back and take that bit of time I needed.
And a very brave thing to do, I have to say. It's quite a brave thing. And also being married to a firefighter, so, frontline emergency services and public service, your pension and everything else that comes with that. There's lots of considerations. These aren't easy decisions to make, are they?
No, and I think that was the main thing that everybody kept going on about. You can't leave because of your pension. And my response was, I don't even know if I'm going to live to draw my pension. And I might as well enjoy life now.
Yeah, it's really interesting. But the young people don't really. I remember I had to have conversations with Olivia on our school run about pensions and public sector and private sector and salaries and those kind of things. They don't learn that in school, but you learn fast as an adult, don't you?
Oh, don't you just? Yeah, absolutely. But I think I would say to my children, yes, of course it's important to plan for the future. Absolutely. But don't plan for the future if it impacts your time now.
Hi everyone, we hope you're enjoying this episode so far. We're just cutting in to say, if you're enjoying our podcast, please click the follow button on whichever platform you're listening on. And please leave us a review. We'd be so grateful for your support and feedback. Podcasts are free to listen to, but if you are loving our school run chats and debates, please consider buying us a virtual coffee. The link will be in the description of every podcast episode, and it will also be in the bio of our Instagram, which is @theschoolrun_official. And why not give it a follow while you're there, so you can see all the updates and get sneak peeks at upcoming episodes. Thank you so much and happy listening.
So what happened? Tell us this big change.
So I was sitting in a coffee shop with a really good friend of mine, and we had our babies in high chairs. She had her baby in one and I had my son in the other. And we were having a chat, as you do, and her daughter started choking. And it was one of those moments where she didn't know what to do. So she froze and panicked. And being a police officer, we obviously have first aid training every year. Mm-hmm. And I was able to intervene, pick the child up, do some choking techniques on her and remove the blockage. And her daughter was absolutely fine.
Brilliant. Wow, what a life-changing moment.
So, yeah, it wasn't life-changing at that time because for me, you just go into autopilot and you do what you got to do. And actually, the daughter was so fine that she continued eating the cookie. straight away after. I mean, she was that fine. But what I did do is I went home to my husband that night and I said, why don't parents know this? I can't get my head round why we go to all these amazing baby groups and, prenatal, postnatal, beautiful groups, but nobody teaches us what to do if our child has an accident or they get ill or they choke. And he was like, yeah, that's a good point, actually. So I did a little bit of searching online, and there was obviously like the big corporate first aid companies that do the qualified courses. You can go, for 2 days, 3 days. But there was nothing just for parents to learn short little tips. I didn't want to overload, and I certainly didn't want to frighten parents, but I felt it was really important that they learnt the basics.
Yeah.
So I decided, because statutory maternity pay is terrible, so I was really struggling with money anyway, that I would do a couple of classes just in my local pavilion, just to teach the local mums, just a few tips. So I created my own little lesson plan, got myself some mannequins. I did the courses that I needed to do. I think the whole thing cost me about £500 to get everything together. And I think I've sold 2 spaces for this 2-hour course, and the rest were just my mates. just to put bums on seats, and they brought their babies along as well. And so I gave them a class, and it was so well received that I kept doing it. And then I decided that I would do it in homes as well. And it got to the point where I was becoming so busy that I needed to make a decision, because I'd gone from getting time back with my family to suddenly being so busy that I was almost going back to being too busy again. So cut a very long story short, I decided to franchise, and that is where we are now.
It's amazing. And why? So your company now is called Daisy First Aid. Why Daisy First Aid? How did the name come about, and how long have you been going? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, the name was... it's funny, because I'd never intended this to be what it is. I intended it just to be my little buffer for my statutory maternity pay. My oldest daughter is called Daisy, and I thought, oh, that's cute. That's cute. And also with Ups a Daisy, like you say to the kids when they fall over. And I thought, well, that just has a really double meaning to it. That just sounds really cute. And I get asked it a lot, and now I feel silly saying, well, actually it's my daughter's name, but that is why it started.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. And you've built a fabulous brand. So I guess you saw the success and thought, well, how do I take it further and scale it? And the decision to leave the police. How long have you been doing Daisy First Aid? And I know that you're all over the country, but what's the impact you're having?
Yeah, we're 10 years now, just 10 years. So it's been a very, very fast 10 years. I don't even know where it's gone. But we have gone from, earning £500 a month to earning significantly more. We've got 106 territories now across the UK.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and we've trained over 100,000 parents. We've saved quite a few lives as well. I think that's probably the best bit about the whole business, is getting messages from parents that have done the course and then they've gone on to use the techniques we've taught them to save their children. I mean, that's just best ever.
Best feeling. And who's attracted to joining you in a franchise? I mean, not many people know about franchising. Your children will. My daughter does, but it's not a common thing, is it?
It's not, actually, and I think we love to shout about it, as you know, Jane. We love to shout a lot, but franchising is about having your own business and being self-employed, but having those arms around you of a brand, of people looking after you, and having the support of both your peers and a franchisor, and having a business model that is already trialed, tested, and we know works, rather than going into being self-employed all by yourself. Which is scary. I mean, there's an awful lot of hats you need to wear as self-employed. So it's much more likely that someone would come into a franchise and succeed, than I think statistically, than if someone was to be self-employed and try and do it by themselves.
Yeah, and I think it's, I don't know whether these stats are up to date, but the ones that always stick in my mind is that 9 in 10 new businesses fail, but 1 in 10 franchises fail. So it's a safer route, isn't it? Because the hurdles have been overcome, the mistakes have been made.
Absolutely. That is an impressive stat, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, when I listen to when you're on the phone, and I'm always in the car listening to all these people, all these franchisees that seem to know me, and I just don't know who they are. But I always think, you said the mistakes have already been made, but then like I listen to a lot of your franchisees come to you for advice with their own struggles in their own business. And I wonder if, because you say all the mistakes have been made, when your franchisees ring you up and have a problem, is there any times where, you've never heard of that problem, you've never actually had to deal with that problem yourself and it's totally new?
Let Jenni answer that question.
Oh my God, yes. Oh God.
But
absolutely.
But you navigate it together.
Never stop learning,
don't you? You navigate it together.
And that's the beauty of it. We've got a collective of really experienced trainers, new trainers, and absolutely, we navigate it together. We will always learn. That there will always be challenges that we come across and overcome. And I think as long as you appreciate that and accept it, then it becomes a lot easier. I think in my very early journeys, if I got something, or if I felt like I got something wrong, I'd panic and think, oh no, what's everyone going to think? Whereas I think now, being a little bit older, wiser, and be a bit more experienced, I have the wisdom to look back and be like, I don't know the answer to that. Let's suss it out.
Yeah, let's find the answer. Yeah, so you're never alone. You're thinking of doing business studies at college, aren't you?
Yeah.
And you know that one module's on franchising, which I think is great that they've got it in a A-level business studies course, but I'm really going to scrutinise what they're actually taught.
You'll be going in there going, oh, I'll do the talk.
Me and you will do it together, Jenni. We'll do it together. And my first memory of you was I heard a little bit of your story about your police background, and I always see you giving back a lot. Talks, sponsoring awards, wanting to build other people up. And that's so me inside, that it's that pay it forward thing. You pride yourself on that, don't you? Why is it so important?
Yeah, and I think that's why we resonate with each other so well, that we both have that in mind. I just love seeing other people succeed. There's no better feeling than watching other people celebrate, and you can celebrate with them. I'm totally not about any negativity. I can't bear it when I see people bashing others. I really, really, I think I might have said before, I keep my circle really tight. The people that I know, like, and trust, I don't really ever allow any negative people. I don't really allow anyone that brings me down into my circle. And I'm quite, I guess I'm quite strict of that. It's not that I wouldn't allow someone, that has problems or has an issue. Of course not, and I'll be there to support. But, and I love this expression, the drains and radiators.
Yeah.
In some people are just drains and they just suck the life out of you, and they're just drained with their negativity. And there are other people you come across in life and they just radiate and you just want to hang out with them.
Yeah.
So there are no drains in my life.
Yeah, fountains. What was the other one we heard when we did an interview with a podcast? Fountains and drains, I think. Similar scenario where you want those where you fill each other up. It's that connection, isn't it?
Definitely. And I feel like even that needs to be taught more in school.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when you say you like to see people succeed, I mean, obviously, for me in school, it's all about comparing each other's grades and who got the best grade. For me, my year, I love this. I mean, I'm the same as you. I like people around me with, good vibes, positive vibes. And I remember in my year 10 mocks were awful. And I worked really, really hard on my year 11 mocks. And I remember when I got my results back, the people that sat next to me were happier for me than they were for themselves, because they knew how hard I'd worked. And that's something that I don't really see, because even with your friends and you say, oh yeah, that's amazing, usually inside you're thinking, oh, they've done better than me, or, you know, I've done better than them. And I just think we should be just helping everyone to just do as best as they can, whether it's a 9 or whether someone's best is a 9, whether someone's best is a 5, then, you know, we should be supporting them to just do the best that they can.
Oh, yes, Liz, that's what we need, 100%. We need you to do the best that you can do, the best that you can be, regardless of everybody else, you know? I completely agree. And the funny thing is, you probably won't ever forget that kindness that your friendship showed, you know, that time. You know, it's stuck in your mind because they showed that kindness, and the world needs more of this.
Yeah, it absolutely does.
More kindness and less comparing.
Yeah, absolutely. Less comparing and more kindness. It's good. It's good. So just as we draw this to an end, tell us now, because obviously I know we're friends and we spend time at events together and things, but I was searching up Jenni and all the things that you've done, and you now do an awful lot of speaking and also this success coaching. Do you want to just touch on that a little bit? Because again, it's another chapter, isn't it?
It is. And that chapter came from COVID, actually, which is, you know, I think COVID was such a weird time, you know, for so many people. But for me, I started talking to some franchisors that were really struggling, just having a chat on the phone, nothing more. And then it kind of followed on that one franchisor mentioned it to a Facebook group, and then they invited me to come and speak to a group of franchisors. And this is all free. Like, obviously, there's no money or anything like that. It was just, let me do something because everyone's going through such a tough time. And so the talks generated more interest than I really thought. I was just kind of speaking from the heart. This is where I've been. This is where I am at now, and these are my coping strategies. And I just kept getting messages from people saying, can we work together? And I definitely had that little bit of imposter syndrome where I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I don't want to dip into that world of coaching someone for money. I'm not quite there yet. So I sat on it for a while. And then I had a conversation with some colleagues, and they were like, what's holding you back? And I said, I've just got this block, this unworthy block that I just can't shift. And actually, what happened
again, like something that just creates, because we've got to keep addressing those little neurons in our brain that draws back to where we were.
Absolutely. And I remember specifically, it takes me back to being, and it's even before school, it's a really early stage of that feeling of unworthiness. And it's still manifest. You know, I'm very good now, and I clear my blockages and as much as possible. That sounded a bit odd. But yeah, absolutely. And this is why everyone is a work in progress, because things will still come up in your life that will just throw a curveball. And I always know that when I start to feel anxious, or if I start to feel stressed, it's like an alarm clock for me. I know, right, time to work on myself. And I'll take myself away and I'll work on myself, whatever it is I need to work through. And I'm very strict that alarm clock is listened to every single time without fail. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so yeah, I ended up taking on my first client, and I was super nervous. And the feedback was so incredible that it's just so good. It was just so good.
And it's just pushing. You will teach this. You will guide your franchisees through that. You're coaching daily without even knowing it. Then you get this feedback, but it's just pushing your comfort zones at every stage. Like, you felt the same doing this podcast as a 15-year-old, didn't you? You were like...
Yeah, proper pushing a comfort zone.
You know, people will think this, or the imposter syndrome. How can I do a podcast, or how can I be a coach? And actually, we can do whatever we set our mind to.
Sometimes you just have to just ignore that little voice and just go, I'm not listening to you today. Just do it anyway.
Yeah, good call. Well, my mum always listens to, and she'll love having a shout out on the podcast, but she listens every week at 6 a.m. on a Monday. She said she can't get out of bed until about 9 or 10 o'clock till she's got through everything she's got to listen to. But if we miss asking a guest a question, she's like, you didn't ask that question, or they didn't answer that question. So that's really interesting. But we always wrap up with a memory from your school run, either a school run with your children, doing the school run, or a school run run that you had as a child. And I wondered what you'd like to share with us on that topic, or if, a number of things.
Do you know what? I thought about this because my school run, we moved home and I had an hour, 50-minute walk on my own to school there and back every day. So I didn't really have anyone to have that chit chat with. I just had myself and my own thoughts. And what I realised was having your own time, your own peaceful time, is so invaluable. And in a world where we are expected to do everything times 100, a million times, and be good at everything and tick all the boxes, we very rarely get time actually just to be on our own, no distractions, and just give ourselves our own thinking time and work through things in our mind. So I think my school run time was so invaluable. I love my me time. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love it. And I just don't think that we as a world actually just get enough of that time.
Yeah.
Oh, really good memory. I love that. It's been absolutely delightful talking to you.
It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I've loved it.
Thank you for being one of our first guests and being an early adopter and supporter and, giving us encouragement and sharing your story. It means a lot. I hope we've inspired at least one person out there today. And if anyone wants to follow your company, get in touch with you, have first aid training for themselves as parents, or, someone's looking for a new career, who are you looking for and where can they find you?
Oh, amazing. So, daisyfirstaid.com is our website. If you need your first aid done, then, jump on and take a look. We're always looking for franchisees. Generally, we are looking for people who have a very happy disposition, that are good with people. We generally attract people like nurses, paramedics, police officers, cabin crew, teachers, but actually you don't need any previous first aid experience. We can teach you everything you need to know. So daisyfirstaid.com. And you can also look at me up on jennidunman.com for all of my coaching stuff as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I look forward to hearing everybody's feedback.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the School Run podcast. If this is your first time listening, please go back and maybe listen to a few other episodes that we've previously recorded. There's lots of interesting topics, people's different roles and careers. We're sharing all of these stories to inspire and empower young people. That's our reason why. You don't have to have it all figured out at school. My co-host Liv is my 15-year-old daughter, and I just keep telling her that school is just a small chapter of life, and there's so much out there if you just say yes to those opportunities. You don't have to have it figured out at school. We're privileged to be having these conversations, and we're really thankful to our guests for coming on. Please would you hit the follow button on the podcast channel that you're listening to us on. This will really help us to grow and improve the podcast long term. It'd be lovely if you could write us a review on the podcast that you listen to us on and maybe give us a star rating. Lots of people have already bought us a virtual coffee so that we can have some chats and plan the content going forward. The link is www.buymeacoffee.com/the school run. www.buymeacoffee.com/the school run. And as Liv has already told you in the middle of this episode, we do have an Instagram, the school run _official, and we also have a LinkedIn showcase page. Would you just share this podcast if you've enjoyed it with one other person today? That would really help us. Thank you so much. Don't forget to click that follow button, and we'll see you again next Monday at 6 a.m.